Hi friend, David here from Learn Stage Lighting, and today I want to look at a pixel controller system that I haven't looked at before that I found really interesting. So the folks at Digidot, the makers of this pixel controller here, reached out to me a while ago and they asked if they could send me some stuff to look at and to give them my opinion. Of course I said yes, because that's what I do with any manufacturer here, is I want to give a fair representation of what's out there, what's available, and ultimately what the pros and cons are of every system that's out there. So, from the Netherlands came some blue boxes to my mailbox, and I opened them up and found some pixel controllers inside. Now, before you turn this video off, if you're new here and new to lighting, head over to learnstagelighting.com, where I've got a free guide I want to get into your inbox. And if you're new to pixel lighting, then you'll definitely want to check out our articles on the site about pixels. Now, the Digidot controller, this is the C4 extended that they've sent me and that I've reviewed my opinions, but they've sent me the product to check out. The C4 extended is interesting to me for a couple reasons. Truth be told, I had heard about the Digidot brand previous to this, but I didn't know a lot about them. Fast forward, they got into contact with me, and we began to dialogue back and forth about their pixel controller and what makes it interesting and different. And ultimately, what I came away from when I first talked to them, even before they sent me this controller, was this. Digidot's mission is they only make pixel controllers, and their goal is that when you have a port of output on a pixel controller, they want you to easily and completely fill that thing up with pixels as best you can. Okay? Now, if you've worked with pixels before, you can understand that this can be kind of difficult. Because after a certain extent, after a certain length of pixels, you've got to re-add power. And if you're going to have breaks in your chain of pixels between one end of pixels, the end of one strand, and the start of another, then you usually have to start with a new output from a pixel controller. Okay? That's what makes this different, the Digidot C4. The unit they sent me out of the box has the ability, if I use just this unit, to plug in up to 4 outputs of pixels right into the C4. Okay? It has the ability for a lot of different triggering options, and I think that's what sets this apart. Where I can trigger it from a different DMX console, just triggers to start different programs that are built into this thing for like an installed setup. I can also go ahead and I can capture the full ArtNet stream with SAC incoming soon, they tell me, from a lighting console or a media server, playing it on my LED pixels. I can then capture it, record it, play it back, build loops, and do all kinds of stuff all within this controller. Not only that, but they also have a long range control type situation built right into this. So they also sent me their pixel transceiver setup. The core of this is their PixelNet transmitter, which just plugs in straight to the terminal blocks right here on the C4. So it all becomes one unit. Then there's a couple power connections between the two, nice and simple, and they include all the cables. At which point, we now have 4 long-range pixel control ports right here on the Digidot C4 Extended. Okay, these guys will just then connect with a network cable, and then that goes to a little tiny circuit board on the other end that connects to your pixels. Now in this case, I've got some Christmas light pixels, and while you do have to solder your pixels or your connector for your pixels onto this receiver, I found that it wasn't too difficult. Having soldered on pixel tapes and stuff in the past, it can be really frustrating, but the contacts that they have here are well laid out, the circuit board is plenty thick, and there's room to work. Okay, so you plug that in, you're good to go. Now, there's a couple other quick things before we dive in and show you some configuration that really I think makes this unique. Okay, the first is that this PixelNet that they use can really be used anywhere in your pixel system. So this is a transmitter that plugs in onto the back of the C4 and transmits to 4 strands of pixels, right? There's 4 outputs here. Now this transmitter can also, in various configurations, output DMX. So now, maybe you've got a smaller installation, it's a pixel controller, and it can have a DMX output for regular DMX lights as well, or a DMX input. Okay, so this goes, and we've got the network cable, and the Ethernet cable goes to the receiver board, which is on the pixels. And then we've got our pixels. So this receiver board and the circuit board on it that's getting the data and passing it to the pixels is actually powered from the pixels. Okay, it's 5 to 48 volts, so you can't mess that up. And it just takes the power that the pixels are already getting from your power supply, feeds it in there. There's a lot of different ways you can do this, which are a little bit beyond the scope of this video. Okay, so this guy doesn't need a separate power supply. He just sits on the end of your pixels. Like, this is a string of Christmas light pixels, which I love. I've also got a pixel tape, which is tied into the power supply a little tight, so I'm just going to leave it there. But any type of pixel product will work just fine. Now, when you get to the end of a run of pixels, that's where these transceivers can also work. So these little ones that sit at the end of your pixels are actually a transceiver. So they're not just a receiver, but they can send as well. So if you go through here, hit the end of your pixel line, now you can go out, plug in a network cable, and go to another point in your system, re-inject power, and start a new strand of pixels. This is important because ordinarily, when you're working with pixels, you generally don't want to send the pixel signal, which Digidot calls SPI, other people call it other things. You generally can't send that signal more than about 25 feet. There's ifs, ands, or buts, and you can get further, but reliably, you really want to keep it short. Okay, this bypasses that because it converts it into their pixel net, sends it a longer distance, and then you can restart again. Again, as they mentioned to me on the phone, like, their biggest goal is that they want you to be able, when you have an output on a pixel controller, they want you to be able to get every pixel out of that possible. And normally, that's not really how it works. You generally, use as much as reasonable, but then the chain's got to stop and you restart somewhere else. Okay, so to dive a little deeper and to give you a little more idea of how this works, I want to dive into the software, because Digidot's worked really hard to make the software that's built into this thing really simple. Where I'm going to go ahead here and I'm just going to plug this in over here to power. I'm going to plug it into Ethernet. Now, there is a network switch built in, so there's 2 ports on this guy, so it can cascade to up to 5 other units, I believe they recommend. And I'm just going to plug it straight into my home network, and then we're going to be able to access this thing and show you how it configures. So when it comes to this Digidot C4, the very first thing we're going to do is go to their website, their interface.digidot.eu. Now, this is one place that the Digidot is a little different from other pixel controllers that I've used and reviewed before. They actually have this web page that goes out and finds any devices on your network. And if you haven't started it up before, it won't show an interface here, but you press discover and it goes finds them. Now, a couple things about this. This is actually one of the things that makes the Digidot really unique. Is I've got it plugged in. It's right here. You see it here. We're glowing real nice there. Upside down D for Digidot. And they have built into this unit here a little DHCP server, which for those of you guys who aren't like network nerds, or me who's become a network nerd, what this means is you can plug it straight into your computer, network cable straight out of the computer into the Digidot C4, and it's going to see that, and it gives the computer an IP address, which wouldn't normally happen if you don't have a router on the network between the two. Gives the device an IP address and puts them in the same range so they can talk. But it's smart. So, like here, I've still got that turned on, that smart DHCP server. But in this case, it's plugged into my network, which has a router. And so it's getting its DHCP from the router. It gets its IP address from there, or you can set it manually. So diving into it just to show you some setup. The thing that impresses me the most, and I know I've said this a lot probably, is that Digidot has really thought through, better than any other pixel controller brand that I've worked with, their interface and how simple it is to use, but yet there's a ton you can do with it. Um, and that's, pretty unique. So just to get started, if you don't haven't done anything before with it, you're given this wizard, which I can press by getting started here, and I can wipe my unit, which is fine. And there's a couple things that they do really well in this process. The first is it just walks you through the setup. So here you can set the IP address and subnet mask as desired. So we're going to set that to exactly what it is right now because we don't want it to change. And then we go to output settings. We set the type of LED protocols. There's a lot of them. Most of the common ones are in here. And in this case, I'm going to set it as WS2811 800 kilohertz because I've got back behind me some LED strip tape and also some LED Christmas light pixels plugged into it. And then we go to the next step. Boom. So now we're just going to do 4 universes. Sure, 2040 channels. Maybe we'll do all 8 for 2 universes a port. Next. If we try to violate, like put too much on it or anything like that, you saw I got a little bit of warning here. You can have it assign the ports automatically or go into advanced settings and you're able to go ahead and change how they do pixels for each port. And then it shows you, okay, here's how the ports are going to work. 2 universes on 1, on 2, on port 3, on port 4. Done. Each have 510 channels, which is very typical with an RGB pixel. And there are other settings here. Boom. And then you finish. And now the thing's set up. And so now I can literally go in, and it knows I have RGB pixels. That's the default, but you can't override it. And I can go and create a scene. I can literally go to the generator here, static color, generate it, give it a name, boom. And that's it. Then I can go down to test scene, I believe it is. Nope. That's okay. And then we get a test scene. So we generate some scenes. We go in here just for kicks, and then we play a scene. I've got a few in here. You see here, boom. There's my red scene right behind me. I just built that inside this. Now, of course, this processor, this pixel controller, will take input from other consoles. So as an example, the other day I was using Onyx. I was using their Digidot pixel engine, and I was running video across my pixels. Not a problem at all. It says, okay, great. We're cool with that. It'll do that all day long. But there's even more under the hood that I think you'll enjoy. Like if you're going as simple as this, where you're like, okay, pull up the pixel controller, assign some universes, leave it alone, then, there's a lot of pixel controllers on the market that do that. Granted, if you look at pricing, this Digidot controller is not absurdly priced compared to other pixel controllers. They're really in the same range. But where it gets interesting, there's some really interesting stuff in here. So say, for example, actually, let's launch Onyx here. And we'll load my show here in just a second. And so the show that I have loaded here is a show that I did the video about the LED wall, DIY LED wall with Christmas light pixels that was behind me here. That was a couple months ago. It's on my house right now for Christmas. But this was the show file for it. And as you can see, I've got a nice pattern up here. And it's firing on my pixels. So let's go ahead. And it's a looping video. It's one of the inbuilt factory content that comes with Digidot from Onyx. So let's go in here, still connected to my my deal here. Go to create scenes. And then it says, boom, I'm receiving ArtNet, life is good. We'll just hit record here, let it go for a couple seconds. I don't know how long that clip really is, so we're just going to stop it here. And then what we can do, it's still receiving live ArtNet, but say I go and I preview it. Let me try to get my butt out of the way. Boom, smack into my shelf. And now it's live, and then I stopped and it goes back to the ArtNet stream. That was maybe hard to see, but say I turn off the ArtNet stream. Okay, so actually, yeah, we'll just do solid white from Onyx. Then I hit preview, boom, it's going. Hit stop, it stops. How simple is that? Find loop here on this time base. So this is actually going to create a looping scene, And it says at 9 seconds and 0.95 that there's a loop there. I don't know if there's actually a loop. And so we're going to save this. We're going to call it Onyx Loop 1. Hit save. And say you were recording this for a standalone pixel matrix or a lobby or a store or something like that. Okay, now I could just go in here and I just go to play scenes, loop 1 right here. No, Onyx loop 1. I've made a bunch of tests here, as you can see. And I play it. I can hit this right here to show me some more info. And from what I can see, it loops pretty well. Not only that, we can change the speed here, totally on the fly, shift the hue, and adjust the brightness. All this completely on the fly. And so this can be really great, like for your non-traditional, like, okay, so say you've got pixels on your stage, you know, you're running them via ArtNet or SACN, you use something like Onyx as your media server, and, you know, boom, good to go. You know, you're able to control them. But when you want to do things that are a little bit more complicated, you have a store, maybe you use the trigger input. There's a little audio jack input, which is not for audio, but for an analog trigger, like a contact. And you can go in there, you can set up triggers in here. And what you do here is, like here, I've built one that just is an ArtNet trigger. So it says, hey, if I send control information from ArtNet on this particular channel, which isn't valid anymore, so we'll put it on a new universe that isn't being used by anything. Boom, send ArtNet on this channel. Done. Okay, it's going to control master brightness, but it can control a whole bunch of things, including multiple things. It can send OSC. It can send UDP messages. That's a cool thing as well. With these triggers, it's not just like DMX triggers. So you can have it. This is really cool. Say you put some pixels in, you know, a room, in a church stage, in a lobby, anywhere like that. You can say, okay, on power up, I'm going to set this program to run, and it's just going to sit there and run. So if this system powers on, if it's in a lobby or something like that, it can go 24 hours a day. You can do time and date based stuff, so you can have it turn off, turn back on, etc. You know, when the right time hits, boom, it turns on. You know, now the cycle's running. It's in a lobby or something like this. It's running, right? Then you could set another thing that says, okay, when we get DMX, stop that program and let DMX control it. Boom, seamless transition. Then you could control it via OSC. So you could have a tablet with touch OSC controlling various things, or a wall panel, etc. You can have your pixels totally controlled by that. Sunrise, sunset. There's a lot of stuff in here. So ultimately, what really sets this controller apart from other pixel controllers is, to me, is the flexibility, the ease of setting it up in this software interface, and their manual. Boy, if you pull this thing up, it's really good. It's even on, this is actually PDF, it's on the unit. So you don't need the internet on your, you know, if you don't have internet on your work site, if you're installing a building or something, it's fine. And they have such a good manual. It's really detailed and really oriented to people if you haven't used Pixels before, or if you have. While we're here in the manual as well, they wanted me to talk for a minute about the different license options. They offer quite a few of them. So first, there's the live version and the extended version of the units. For the live versions, they go from 4 to 16 universes, 4, 8, 12, and 16. You can request a 24, they tell me. And the extended units range from 1 to 8 universes, etc. So take a note of those on the screen. The cool thing about these is it's a software license ultimately. Each live box or each extended box, no matter which license it's on, is the same physical box. And so you can upgrade your license at any time if you need to through their website. That is totally doable as well. And they also wanted me to mention that this is actually really cool, that the licenses, it's a number of universes, but it's channel-based licensing. So you get, say you have an 8 universe license, you get 8 universes of channels, but you can spread that out among, 10 universes or 12 or whatever. It's just about the total number of channels. But what really sets this apart is how easy it is to get going with it, how easy it is to configure different scenes and be able to play things back, have things in kind of a standalone mode, but then also get complete control from a stage and even more. Truth be told, I've only begun to kind of crack the lid open on everything this can do. The guys at Digidot have a lot of examples of different things it can do, like in those cool gyms where people ride the bikes and there's flashy lights everywhere. These controllers work great for those because you can have them do a scene of standalone when there's nothing being sent. Then you could have it get input or a trigger from ArtNet or from any other source, and then you could go back. So a lot of options there. But let's dive back over behind me there and wrap this up, talk a little bit more about this controller, where you can get it, and ultimately what my thoughts are. Awesome. So what did you think? At the end of the day, when it comes to choosing a Pixel controller, obviously Digidot sent me this Pixel controller and they've sponsored this video, and I'm thankful to them for that. But I want you to choose what's right for you. But looking at it, especially if you need to reconfigure things a lot or you're working with a permanent installation, I would take a really good look at the Digidot C4 system. They've got the regular C4, this is the extended, which includes the recording and media server-like functionality. And they tell me, wink wink, that there's even more exciting stuff coming down the line. Just the ability though with these to be able to go between local outputs and long range, to be able to reconfigure different long range outputs and get DMX outputs out of the same box as a Pixel controller, makes this really a unique Swiss Army knife that can do a lot of different things and in different setups could be used different ways. Ultimately, your controllers when you're working with Pixels are an important part, and this is a great option. So check it out at digidot.eu or find your regional dealer, of course. And if you like what we're putting down here, if you like these kind of educational tutorials, check out my other videos here on Pixels. And also, head over to learnstagelighting.com, get your free guide to begin with lighting. We'll see you guys there. Thanks.